Here is your top story for January 25, 2026. Judge grants restraining order against DHS after Border Patrol kills Alex Pretty in Minneapolis. Source: CBS News. A federal judge granted a temporary restraining order against the Department of Homeland Security, barring the agency from altering or destroying evidence in the killing of ICU nurse Alex Pretty by Border Patrol agents in South Minneapolis. The order was issued by a U.S. District Court Judge, Eric Tostrud, to preserve evidence as the investigation continues. The article also notes President Trump is urging Minnesota Governor Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Frey to cooperate rather than resist, in an effort to avoid stoking division and violence. Here is your top story for January 26, 2026. Immigration chief departing Minneapolis as Trump sends border czar Tom Homan to scene. Source: BBC News. The immigration chief in Minneapolis is departing as President Trump sends border czar Tom Homan to the scene. The move is described as a sign that the administration may be pulling back from its previous, tougher immigration enforcement stance. Bovino led the operation, while observer Pretty filming the confrontation was shot multiple times on a Minneapolis street. Here is your top story for January 27, 26. Trump says government will de-escalate a little bit in Minnesota after Pretty shooting. Source: BBC News. Trump says the government will de-escalate a little bit in Minnesota after the weekend killing of Alex Pretty. Minnesota officials and locals renewed calls for Trump to end his immigration operation there. The Department of Homeland Security pulled Minnesota mission leader Gregory Bovino, a Border Patrol official, from the state. Here is your top story for January 25th. Here is your top story for January 28, 2026. Video appears to show Alex Pretty in scuffle with federal agents 11 days before his death. Source: CBS News. A newly released video appears to show 37-year-old Alex Pretty confronting federal immigration officers on a Minneapolis street. The confrontation occurred 11 days before he was fatally shot in a separate encounter with Customs and Border Protection agent. CBS News reports the footage as part of the ongoing coverage of Pretty's interactions with federal authorities. Here is your top story for January 29, 2026. FBI searches Fulton County Elections Office seeking 2020 ballot. Source: CBS News. The FBI executed a search warrant Wednesday at a Fulton County Elections Office in Georgia, seeking to take ballot. A CBS News source says the investigation is linked to the 2020 presidential election. The report provides few additional details about the scope or purpose of the search. Here is your top story for January 30, 2026. Trump nominates government economist to lead Bureau of Labor Statistics after firing a prior commissioner. Source: CBS News. President Trump announced on Friday that he has nominated Brett Matsumoto, a government economist, to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The move follows Trump's past criticisms that the BLS releases low monthly jobs numbers to make him look bad. Here is your top story for January 31, 2026. U.S. ambassador arrives in Venezuela to reopen diplomatic mission after 7 years. Source: Associated Press. U.S. Ambassador Laura Dogu arrived in Caracas on Saturday to reopen the American diplomatic mission in Venezuela after 7 years of severed ties. The move is described in the report as following the removal of Nicolás Maduro from office by a U.S.-ordered military action. Dogu's arrival marks a step toward restoring diplomatic relations between the United States and Venezuela, according to the Associated Press.